Yeah. All right. First things first. You know what? I'm gonna add you to the stream right now. That's you, right?
That's
There
me.
we go. There we go.
That's me.
Awesome. 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 So that's what I'm gonna do. First things first. I'm gonna salute the divinity in you. I'm gonna respect the divinity in you. And to everybody who's out there watching the stream or looking at the video, I'm gonna introduce the writer, the author, the talented, the publisher,
Hey,
Tamara Pray Fraizer. How you doing, Tamara?
I'm doing well. I'm doing
Awesome.
well.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you on with me with the beautiful infinite creators. So
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
awesome, awesome. How's everything going? And take us on your origin. Take us on the beginning of your journey and how you became a writer, an author, a publisher. Could you take us there?
Yes. Like you said, my name's Tamara Pray Fraizer,
Mm-hmm.
and I am an author, a publisher. I wear many, many hats. I have been writing professionally since 2005, and I actually got into the profession. I was dragged into the profession. Let's just say that.
Mm.
I just always enjoyed writing. And I had a friend who experienced a life altering event, and she made a miraculous comeback. Miraculous comeback. And I was telling her one day, I think you should write a book. You should
Mm-hmm.
write a book telling people about your story, because there's a lot of people out there who would take that injury and let it debilitate them, but she did not. And I think, just thought that she would be an inspiration to people. So I thought that she should write a book. Well, she also felt like she should write a book, but because she does not like to write, she said, maybe you should write my book. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the beginning.
Wow. Awesome. So you were talking about you're talking about your friend. Is that in his own time? Is that the book you're
Yes,
talking about?
yes.
Could you take us along that journey? How that
Sure.
started?
Like I said, my friend, her name is Faye Baker.
Mm-hmm.
She was a high school well, I'm not going to say was, because she still is high school basketball coach and a teacher. She was involved in an accident in the year 2000 that left her paralyzed from the waist down. I was at the hospital the day the doctors told her family that she would never walk again. Fast forward a year later, I had returned home from Atlanta, and I was working with Faye. And I saw all the strides that she was making every day. So
Mm-hmm.
one morning I got to work, and she was walking up the sidewalk using forearm crutches. And I just sat in my car for a long time saying, oh my God, that is amazing. Because the doctor said that she wasn't going to be able to do it. So when I went into work that day, I spoke with her about it. And she said her parents had also been telling her that they thought she should write a book. And so when she told me that, of course, I thought she was crazy, because I never thought about writing professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went home and I told my mom what she said, my mom told me, why not? So I was like, everybody's crazy. Everybody's crazy except me. So fast forward, I started thinking about it. I never really said anything to anyone about it, but I started moving forward, and I just started writing because I was curious myself. Everybody always seemed to think that I had a talent for writing. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see for myself. So I wrote a little bit and I put it to the side. Maybe a few weeks later, I picked it up again and I looked at it and I read it. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to say, as a reader, oh, that's good.
Wow.
That's real good.
Wow.
So I just started writing. And then when I told her I started writing, she kind of took it out of my hands. She told her parents. Tamara started writing my book. And if you ever met the Bakers, you would know that you
Mm-hmm.
can't back out once you go forward with something. So that's how it all began. It took me, whew, maybe the process was about 2 years, but it wasn't because of the writing. I got held up in the process because in between starting and finishing, my mom passed away, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of, my inspiration died a little bit
Mm-hmm.
for a while, maybe about 6, 7 months. I didn't write anything. She didn't push me, she just told me, she was very supportive. Whenever you're ready to pick up, I'm here for you. If you need help, if you need support, you need someone to work with you, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
And so going forward, I contacted a publisher in the area from Hinesville, Georgia, about 45 minutes outside of Savannah. So I was able to find a publisher in Savannah who walked me right through the process. And April 2005, April 1st, 2005, we had the release for In His Own Time.
So
It's my first book.
did you have was there like a mentor or somebody who guided you along this process, or you just had this innate ability and this talent that you was able to just let it all ooze up?
Well, I did have a mentor. I hired, his name was Dr. Tom Williams. He was a publisher in out of Savannah. And what he did, and I will forever be grateful. When I wrote him a letter because, and I told him what I was doing and I was looking for a publisher. And I actually hand wrote this letter and mailed it to him.
Okay.
And when he got the letter, he called me. And the first thing he said was, listen, you said you're not a writer, but I can't tell. He said, even your letter says you're a writer. And from there, it was like we clicked, everything just clicked. And the first chapter I wrote, I sent him the first 20 pages. He edited my first 20 pages. He edited those pages, and then he sent it back to me. And he said, this is how I want you to write going forward. So going forward, I took all the notes that he gave me, and I wrote the way that he wrote it. And going back in my original manuscript compared to the finished manuscript that he gave me, there was not a lot of editing done. So I was happy. He said, you made my work very easy. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's a little bit of God-given talent along with Dr. Williams' mentorship.
A lot of hard work.
Yes. Yes.
So
it doesn't seem like work though.
So I was looking at your the book that you did, Your Own Kind of Beautiful. And I'm going to be honest with you. I have 3 little girls. And by the end of that book, I was almost crying. I'm going to be honest with you.
Really?
How did that book come up? Because it's a kid's book, right? It's a children's book. Mm-hmm. And but like I said, I think the whole message of it was an unbelievable message. So can you just get into that with me for a little bit?
Mm-hmm. After I published the first book, which was 2005, I had always been on the lookout for another story. I said, this story is just so good. I can't come back with just anything. So years passed, as you can see, years and years went by. I did do a couple of projects, ghostwriting mostly. And one day I was having a conversation with my sister, and I was, she's like, you need to be writing. You need to write some screenplays. You need to write something. Mm-hmm. And I said, I just don't know what to write. I just, I can't find anything that just grabs me. And she says, well, you should just mind the business that pays you. Mm-hmm. And that said to me, I needed to focus on children because I've been working in the local school system for 27 years. And I thought about it. I work at a high school, and I said, well, I would write for high school kids, but by the time they get to high school, if they don't have a strong sense of self, it's really hard to make them believe their greatness, to show them who they really are, as opposed to who social media and other people tell them who they are. So I decided to go back and start writing stories for younger kids, elementary age students. And the way that particular story came about was because I was the original Daisy. I was the little girl with the dark skin, with the Afro puffs, who wanted her hair straight, And I remember when I was a little girl, there weren't a lot of books. There weren't any books that had characters that looked like me. And so me and my sister talking, she's one of my biggest influences. And, we decided that we wanted to kind of make it family, you know, oriented. So we wanted our characters to look like members of the family. So when I found my illustrator, I sent her a picture of my niece and said, "This is what I want my character to look like." My niece, she's 17 now. At the time, I think she may have been like 13.
Okay.
Maybe younger, maybe a little bit younger, but I wanted to make sure that the characters, were a depiction of my family members. And I wanted to talk about hair because there's so many people that I come into contact with, even in the school, the students, the girls. Sometimes they would come to school, and if their hair is messed up, they're messed up for the rest of the day. So I always keep a brush and hair products so that when they come in and they're upset, I can tell you, I don't know how many times that I had to go into the bathroom with the little girl to make sure her hair, was right for the day, because we are really serious about our hair.
Yes, ma'am. And I humbly bow before you, because the self-image, you touched on the self-image, and that's important to have a positive self-image. I don't care who you are, what you are, and you have to have a positive self-image. How you see yourself is how you reflect out to the world. So
Right.
I bow to you for that. I definitely bow for you, and I salute you
Salute.
for doing the work that you do, because it is life changing, I think, for a lot of people. Like I said, I came across the book this morning and I was reading some of it, and by the time especially the kids' book, I got to the end of it, I was like, oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
So finding your gift, finding your talent, right? Did you find your talent when you took on the story about your friend, or was this something that you always did? And if you look back, were they like signs or little breadcrumbs in the past that you recognize as you got a little older?
That's a great question, because whenever I go to do school, go to different schools, they always ask me, how did I begin? And I always tell them, when I was a little girl, my mom took me with her. She was a preschool teacher, so she always took me with her to work. I have been in school my whole life, and I enjoyed reading. My mom was a big reader, so I would always read constantly. Whenever you saw me, I had a book, had my head in a book. My friends, oh my goodness, put the book down, Tamara. But I'm always reading. So when I was coming up, spelling was my favorite subject. Came easy for me because of my reading. And I love the assignments when the teacher would tell us to write a story using our spelling words, or write sentences using our spelling words. I would just get really creative with it. So there were breadcrumbs along the way. I was the friend that wrote the love notes for all of the friends, to their boyfriends. That was my job. I was the one writing the poems to boyfriends who were deployed overseas.
Okay.
That was my job. So yes, breadcrumbs, definitely.
Okay. So if you could tell, a beautiful infinite creator or someone, a young adult, and they're early on their path, and they want to be a writer, or they want to be an author, or they want to be a publisher, what kind of advice can you give them on becoming a writer?
Well, I tell people all the time, do your homework. There's a lot there are a lot of resources out. Just you can Google and find anything, so there's no excuse for you. If you have just a shred of talent, there's no excuse for you not to do your homework and learn your craft. Learn your craft. Make sure that you get in there anytime there, classes being offered, or, any opportunity you get. Go out there and just do it. And I tell people all the time, you know, I had no idea that I could get paid for doing what I love. So I tell people all the time, find that thing that you're good at and get so good at it that people will pay you to do it. And like I said, there's too many resources out there for you. Find a mentor. Definitely find a mentor. That is the biggest thing. Find someone who's already tread that path, And also, don't be afraid to ask questions. There are no dumb questions except the ones that you don't ask, you know. So just do your homework and just do it. Do it.
Oh,
I'm there. If there's a story inside of you, get it out. Get it
facts.
out.
Facts. Um, there's there's a lot of obstacles that people face, that we all face in life. Were there any major obstacles, and how'd you overcome the obstacles that were in the way of you becoming a writer, of you becoming a publisher, and you doing the things that you enjoy to do? What were some of the obstacles? And tell us how you got around some of those.
Well, one of the major obstacles for me was that I was a single parent. I have three children that I was raising on my own, undereducated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I took classes, one credit, one class at a time. Um, I sought my education, even though it was hard. And let me tell you, it took me 16 years to get my first degree. 16 years, because sometimes I have to work full time. Thank you. I have to work full time,
Yes, ma'am.
and I have to raise my children. And so when my mother was alive, she was able to help me with my kids. But when she passed in 2003, my kids were still young. So one class at a time. And finances were always a barrier. And just, I took extra jobs. I wrote for people. I helped people realize their dreams, because that's what I needed to do to earn the money to put back into my writing. So that's what I did. I wrote whatever I needed to write
Okay.
in order for me to get where I was trying to go.
So you epitomize anything's possible.
Anything.
That's what I'm getting from you.
That's what
That's
you
what I'm
hear?
picking
Yes.
up. That's what I'm picking up. So anything's possible. So when they tell you no, what was your answer to that when people were saying you can't do it, or why are you doing this? Did anybody tell you couldn't do it and why
Well,
you shouldn't do it? And
you
clearly you
know,
ignored them.
well, I will say this. I have the best support system
Okay.
in the world.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had nine, it was nine girls, five boys.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother had a large family. So my aunts, they were constantly on me. I have two aunts in particular who would not stop until I got my degree.
Mm-hmm.
Even it's an associate's degree, but they would not stop until I got my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I have friends, Faye, the one who I wrote the book about,
Mm-hmm.
she supported me financially,
Mm-hmm.
in writing her book. And so I just had a really awesome support system, and I rarely had people to say, you can't do it. I had people who I knew they were thinking, she not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But the best thing you can do is show them. I mean, I can show you better than I can tell you. It's not
Facts.
that you're not going to stop my flow. You're not going to stop my grind.
Facts.
When I have something that I'm trying to do, fast forward.
Awesome. Awesome. So what are some things that you try to instill in your children? You talk about your kids and you know how proud of you are of them. Just tell us some things that are some life lessons that you may have passed along or you try to pass along, and why you were proud as a parent.
Well, I have three children. I've birthed three children who are now adults.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest child is 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 27-year-old, a 30-year-old, and a 31-year-old. And I had them not so young, but from watching me, they know the value of hard work just from watching me. Everything that they learned from watching me as a single parent wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that. My daughter always thinks that it's independence. They're very independent because of that. And sometimes, independence is not always great. You need everybody. My mom used to say all the time that you can't live by yourself. So they're very independent. They are motivated, self-motivated. And it was mostly, I guess they saw more than the conversations. They watched me. And so, my son, I have a son, two college graduates. My youngest son, he drives trucks, but he smart. He knows how to go and, go for what they want. And that's the best thing. They are confident. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of their accomplishments. And I used to tell them all the time, I just want you to be better than me. I want you to do better than me. I don't want you to make it as hard as I made it. So they took my advice. I must say, really great kids. Great
Well,
adults.
they probably had a great example, I would say. You know what I mean? Usually they say that the fruit don't fall too far from the tree.
True.
That's
true.
So it seems like you being an educator, you being a writer, you putting a value on education, they probably picked that up. And I know a lot of people nowadays, some people may feel like it's better to get a trade. You could go either way, but but for me, I believe in education. It depends on how you want to work. Some people choose to work with their minds, and I'm not saying everybody don't work with their minds, right. But some people just may like the physical, nature of working. So
I say all the time that everyone won't go to college. Everyone is not college material. Some people actually like getting out there and working with their hands. In so many professions, they're out there making more money just from these than we are from here. So I just tell them to be the best at whatever it is you're doing. Be the best at it. Be the best at it.
Wow. So I agree with you, but you come across a lot of youngsters, I believe, in your job. And what is the main message that you try to get to them? Because you're a mom of three. You've done your thing as far as raising your kids. They're young adults now. I mean, when you see these younger students and these younger men and women, these boys and girls, what do you hope to help them achieve in their lives?
Well, the main thing, over the past few years, we've been seeing a lot of our kids. They're not strong in here, and like I said, they don't know their greatness. They think where they are now is everything. And I tried to let them know that there's a whole big world out there. There is a huge world out there. This is just one small space in the world. Don't just say, this is all that I'm going to be, and this is the only place you're going to be. You have a whole world out there to explore, and everything is not the same way it is in this small town. I tell them all the time, they have to think for themselves. If anything, there's a lot of peer pressure, and I just want them to be able to think for themselves, know who you are, so no one can tell you who you are. Because a lot of times they try to tell them, bullying, they're bullying, they're telling them you're this, you're not that. If you know who you are, nobody, and I say it all the time, know who you are and know whose you are, and then no one else can tell you anything about you, but I try to tell them also, listen, we've been there. You all, they always seem to think that we don't know what we're talking about. Nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. The same things that you're dealing with, we dealt with it. We just didn't have social media to magnify it, but the same things you're doing. And I tell them all the time, when you make a mistake, baby, go forward from here, because you're not making any mistakes that we didn't make before. It's just that there was no social media, so the news didn't get around quite as fast,
Ma'am.
But I tell them all the time, when you graduate from high school, you might not even remember these kids 10 years from now, so don't let this be the influence,
Facts. I agree with you 100%. Publishing. Let's talk a little bit about publishing. A lot of people don't understand publishing, but I know, a lot of times dealing with like musicians and things like that, or writers, they may not understand the business of publishing completely. What can you tell us about, about publishing. Can you share anything, any insight, any tips, controlling publishing? Just when you do your work, because some people, I've seen people in the music industry, young people, and they would all be about their publishing, but they'll never ever finish a product. You know what I mean? So there's one thing to finish a product, have copyrights, trademarks, and publishing. And most people don't even understand how publishing works. Could you put a little light on that for us?
Well, I can just say something, recently that came up. I have my own publishing. I'll just go back. When I published my first book, we call it self-publishing, but in fact, a company, which they call Vanity Publishers, published it for me. And when that company publishes for you, that company controls your product. So the company that I published under my first time around was a one-man company. And when he got sick, then I was not able to order books. I missed events, that type of thing. And when he got better, he says, Tamara, look, there's no guarantee that I'm going to be here tomorrow or the next day. And if I were to pass away, your stuff might pass away with me. So what I want you to do, I want you to form your own company. And it doesn't have to be a company where you publish for anyone else. It could just be so you can publish your own works. And so from there, in 2008, I started my own publishing. And like I said, it wasn't necessarily a company, but it was for me to publish my own works. And I named it Julian's Legacy after my grandfather because he was my biggest influence. Watching him, he was my biggest influence. And I wanted there to be something that I leave for my kids so they can pass down to their kids. So I did the work and formed my own company, Julian's Legacy Publishers. And publishing is basically just doing the work. Making sure you have the ISBN number. Each book, if you want to sell your book in stores, has to have a unique number, ISBN number. What the mistake a lot of people make, and let me just go back and say, I won't say mistake because, it may not be a mistake for them. They may want to do it that way. But like say when they publish through Amazon and they don't have to purchase their own ISBN numbers, that means that belongs to them, so I always tell people, make sure you purchase your own ISBN numbers. Every book that you publish, say for example, when I did the last book that we did a soft cover, we did a hardback, we did an ebook. Each one of those formats has to have an ISBN number, a different ISBN number. So people are like, I don't want to pay for that. So then they'll go over and allow like Amazon or another vanity publishing company to publish their works, and then you don't have control over it. So whenever you need to order books, you have to go through another person. Whenever the royalties come in, they come to that person. So you have to rely on that person, you being honest, to make sure you have all of your royalties. So I tell people all the time, even with my clients, I always say, I can help you set up your own publishing. That way you don't have to rely on me, because that's what Mr. Williams did for me. That is always an option, and I would tell people wholeheartedly, they think that they can't do it. Well, I couldn't do it either. I didn't know I could do it. But you can do anything you want to do if you have the mindset to do it. It's work and you have to put in the work, but you can do it. So that's the one thing that I tell people all the time. Do your own, make it your own. That way you can control everything. You do your own marketing. And it's those things that people say, I don't want to do any, I don't want to have to do that.
It's the work.
But if you want to succeed, you have to put in the work. Yes, absolutely.
I'm humbly bowing again because you're teaching us. You're sharing. I think a lot of people need to notice you don't want to give up the control over your product to someone else and don't have the control. and you just putting us on game, and I'm going to salute the divinity in you again for that one, for dropping that on us. I appreciate that.
That's the self-publishing. A lot of people want to get with the big publishing houses, and God knows I would love for a big publishing house to see my work and say, we want you, but I just like the freedom of being able to handle my own, but it takes time. So you have to have the time to put in the work to make sure your product is out there and it's being seen, and you're going to different events and classroom visits. For me, classroom visits, vendors, fairs, just it's a lot of work, but it's gratifying.
Awesome. It is. To learn even more, to learn is gratifying to learn. So I appreciate you for that. I want to step back for a second. Take us to that day when you received that phone call, when you were walking through that front door of your house with the groceries or the bags in your hand, and Michelle called.
Oh, that day.
Take us to that. Can you walk us through that?
Yes. Okay, we're talking about the day that Faye and Michelle were involved in the accident that left Faye paralyzed. I was just coming home from the grocery store. I had bags. I was like kicking the door open when Michelle called, and I answered the phone, and I was just like, oh my goodness. I dropped everything, and she was upset. She was crying, and Michelle's been my best friend since I was 12. So, when she told me they were in an accident, that she was fine, but Faye was hurt really bad. And I just ran upstairs, grabbed some clothes because she wanted me to bring her some clothes, and I jumped in a car and zoomed to Savannah. And on my way to Savannah, I was just worried about what I would find when I got there, because I was on my way to the site. And the site was actually, I worked in Bluffton, South Carolina, right across the bridge going into South Carolina. And it happened right before the exit to my job. So I knew exactly where they were. But before I could get there, Michelle called me back and said, go to the hospital. I'm on my way to the hospital. Just meet me at the hospital. So when I got to the hospital, I was there by myself, and I was just wandering, and I asked someone where I would go. She was coming in, on a helicopter because she was flown by Lifestar. So they gave me direction to a waiting room. And when I got to the waiting room, Faye's sister-in-law was there, and I think one of her cousins. So we were all there together waiting. And that's when, we had been there probably, it's been 20 years, but we had been waiting for a while when the doctor came in and asked if there was any family members there. And because, her sister-in-law was there. She's not actually my family member, but she's my family. And so that's when they told us, that she had been involved in the accident. The van flipped over, and she had broken her neck, and her spine was crushed. And the doctor said while we were in there that, I'm afraid she's never going to walk again. And I was like, that was, it just took me away. But then her sister-in-law said, she was like, doctor, do you believe in God? And he was like, yes. So she was like, well, God has the final say. We appreciate your expertise, but God has the final say. And I was sitting there like, oh, yes. So, that was a really awesome moment. The whole thing was just spiritually refreshing, going through the whole process with the Baker family, because they're so spiritually rooted. It was awesome. Talking to her mom, her dad, her sister, strong spiritual base. So they never believed that she would never walk again. That just wasn't an option, And for me, having the experience of, being around them, doing the interviews and that type of thing, it just built me up spiritually. It truly did.
Wow. That takes me to belief. You said something that really caught my attention right there. Their belief. How did that impact your life, and how did it change your life writing this book and witnessing in this time and witnessing everything that you were going through? Because you bring up this family and you bring up their spirituality and their belief. Now I tell my kids anything works if you believe in it. That's what I tell my kids. You know what I mean? If you believe that works for you and it works, that's fine. But how did your life was impacted by their faith and the spirituality and everything that was going on at the time?
It truly was. I grew up in the church. My grandmother made sure we were in church, Sunday school, Bible study, vacation Bible school. But I kind of left the church early as a young adult. When I had my children, I left the church. And even though I shared a personal relationship with God, I prayed. My spiritual base was not as strong as it could have been had I stayed in church. So being in their presence and witnessing all the miracles, because God has some miracles that he is passing out daily. And just, it was just an awakening for me. It really, honestly, the whole experience from, writing the book and in between, I will tell you, my mom passed away, and my mom was my biggest cheerleader. She was the one who, whenever I started writing the book, when I would go home, I would show my mom what I wrote, and she would get the computer and I'd make the font really big for her, and she would go through and tell me, no, you worded that wrong, fix that, you missed a comma, you missed this, So when she passed away, my mom was in vegetative. Well, I wouldn't say she was comatose, but she was unconscious, and she was on a ventilator for 11 days. And I remember thinking, the doctor said Faye wouldn't walk again. The doctors are saying that my mother is brain dead, but there was a little bit of activity right down the center, and they wanted us to take her off the ventilator. But I didn't believe that is not my call. It's not, life and death that's not my call. So, that's what my siblings and I felt, that wasn't for us to do. And if, we wanted to give her every opportunity, to fight for her life. And so for 11 days, we prayed that, she would come out of it. And when she didn't, it affected me. It didn't happen for me. It happened for Faye, but it didn't happen for me. And for a while, like I said, I kind of stopped writing. I wasn't inspired to write anymore. And not because I felt like this is fake, because I always knew, what happened with Faye is real. It just wasn't, what God had for my mom. I had to recognize that, that wasn't her walk. It's not everybody's walk, so I had to go, get back in there and say, what would your mom want you to do? She definitely would not want you sitting here, crying and woe is me when, she was the biggest cheerleader for this book, finish the book. So I had to go get myself together, all the way together. And I'll tell you one incident that kind of said, okay, get yourself together, Tamara. Whenever Faye would come to work, I would go out to the parking lot to help her get her wheelchair out of the car. And this particular day, I was running late, and I'm running to try to get to the parking lot because it was hot outside. And I says, oh my goodness, it's hot outside. She's going to be sitting out there waiting for me. And when I got to the door to go out, she was sitting in her wheelchair in front of the door. So I opened the door and she just wheeled right past me. And I'm like, who helped you get into your wheelchair? Who helped you get out of the car? And she was like, I did it myself. So I was like, she just wheeled on down the hallway and just left me standing there with this stupid face. But it was what I needed to get up my butt and stop feeling sorry for myself and get back to writing. So that was the one thing that just kind of pushed me right along. And she was always doing that. She was always providing inspiration, not just to me, but just to the kids in the school. Whenever you're tempted to feel sorry for yourself, you have use of all of your limbs. There is no reason for you to sit here and complain. If she's going on with her life, living her life, then what's your excuse? So she was always providing that motivation for me to get up and move. Yeah.
Wow. So where did you find? So you found your inspiration in Faye, or do you think you found your inspiration in something else along the way?
Well, a little bit Faye, my mother, because I knew that she wanted me to finish. She always wanted me to do something great. And her friends, when she passed away, so many of her coworkers were like, she talked about you all the time. She talked about her Tammy all the time. And, just wanting to make sure that, I did something to make her proud, number one, and something to motivate my kids and make them proud of me. I didn't want to always be viewed by them as a struggling single mother. I wanted them to view me as strong, so they can be strong, so I just found my inspiration in people. I love people.
I think the kids probably picked up on that, though. I think your kids probably picked up on that. So when you talk about Faye a lot, and you talk about the accident, and I got up to the point where I believe they were in the hospital and they broke the news. So does Faye end up walking again in the book?
What she does, well, she can walk. She uses the wheelchair because it's more comfortable. It's easier. It's very taxing on her to walk. She does have use of her limbs, and she uses the wheelchair for work, but at home, she exercises, she walks on the treadmill, but she does it in regular everyday life. She uses her wheelchair.
Okay. So I always like to say, just because my path is different doesn't mean that I'm lost. That's one thing that I like to say. And I hear you talk about church and being in church. I believe I am the church, but that's another story. And another. What spiritual? What have you learned spiritually? Because you went there for a little bit. What have you learned spiritually through all this that you could share with us?
that one scripture. I can do all things through Christ. Okay. Absolutely. And I also have learned to show gratitude in everything. I am big on, to whom much is given, much is required. I'm big on that. So because God has given me so much, and even when one part of my life may be lacking, but if this part is, he's gifted me, and my responsibility is to go out and share it with the world, to inspire people with my gift. He didn't give it to me to sit on, so that's one of the big things that I've learned. And also that your gift will make room for you, and it absolutely will.
I got you. So the beautiful infinite creators love to read. We know you're a writer. We know you're a ghostwriter. We know you're an author. Has there been anything that you've read in your life? I'm not going to let you say the Bible either. Have there been anything in your life that's made a difference in who you are as an individual, as a person, as a spiritual being?
Let's see. I've read so much, so much. I love reading. Like I read, Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Mm.
You know, The Bluest Eye. Those books, and even The Souls of Black Folks.
Mm-hmm.
Those books are, you know, influential. I've read so. Let me tell you, I have bookshelves on bookshelves on bookshelves, and none of it is always what I should be reading.
Uh-huh.
But those books, you know, really made me want to be a writer. And when I was little, I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I didn't understand everything that I was reading, but as I got older, you know, I understood. I love Maya Angelou, of course. She is phenomenal. She's, oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I love her. And I read a lot of poetry, and I'm always reading spiritual, you know, inspirational sayings. As a matter of fact, my pastor, Deborah Dyer,
Mm-hmm.
New Vision Restoration
There you
Center.
go. Shout out.
Shout out to my pastor. She's my aunt. She's my pastor.
Okay.
And she asked me when we first started the ministry, because that's when I went back to church,
Mm-hmm.
probably about 8 years ago,
Okay.
when I went back fully
Mm-hmm.
to the church.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked me, you know, if I would speak in church, and speaking and being in front of people was my biggest fear.
Mm.
My biggest fear. And I started doing it, what we call the 3-minute testimony,
Okay.
you know, on Sundays. And then I stopped because, you know, I still just wasn't comfortable. And I had to pray about it and pray about it. She didn't push me. When I stopped, she let me stop. But, you know, God dealt with me. He dealt with me. Just going into church every Sunday, he dealt with me. And then I went back to her and I asked her, what can I do to help the ministry? And she says, go back to your 3-minute testimony. And of course, it's grown from 3-minute testimony to 5-7-minute testimony. But every time I got up to speak, it was easier. Each time it was a little bit easier. And I've spoken in front of, you know, bigger crowds than my home church, which was awesome. I haven't done it. I think I've done it just 2 or 3 times since the pandemic, and I need to get back. I need to get back to it. But I've grown so much spiritually since being in this ministry, and I'm just grateful for it. I'm grateful for my pastor and my church family. You know, they believe so much in me. They see so much in me, you know. So
awesome. I know you quoted, "Greatest He is in me than he is in the world," and you also you also said something else to me that jumped out at me. You said that you kept doing it. You kept doing the 3-minute testimony or whatever. Is it true that anything that you keep on doing and you repeat, you're gonna get better at it?
Well, that's a good question. I was talking to my grandson about that recently. You know, I was telling him, you know, practice makes perfect. And I will tell you this. I will tell you this. The comfort for me comes in speaking the word. I did poetry at a club and I loved it. I started doing poetry because I initially wanted to speak to single mothers. And I knew that I can't get up there and speak to anyone because I'm shy in that way. So I figured if I get up and do the poetry, it would make me more comfortable. It never got more comfortable. It never. I did it, and I probably did it for about 7 or 8 years, but it never got more comfortable. So for me, I know when I am doing something and it is in my purpose, God makes it easier. You know, he provides the support. What I'm missing, he provides that missing element. So,
but did you get better? That's the question. You may have been uncomfortable, but did you get better?
I got better with my with my spiritual stuff, I didn't get any better with my poetry. My poetry is still it's still the same. I had fans.
I got
don't know
you.
why.
You don't know why? You don't know why? Oh my goodness! You know why you got fans?
No.
You know why? You know, because you put in the work. The rubber met the road. You got out and you did the work. You did the work. You might have didn't see it. You didn't see it.
I didn't.
But your fans see
they
it.
did. I actually have fans.
I'm saying.
That amazed me. And my pastor says, Tamara, that's because God says that, because I'm very matter of fact, I don't hide, what I'm trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you what I have to say to you.
Okay.
I'm not going to, hide it under a whole bunch of metaphors and And she says, well, that's how it's supposed to be. Even a baby is supposed to be able to understand it. And that's how you speak. She says, but it's impactful, and I never could see it. But, even doing poetry, people would come up. I had people come up and ask me, can you write me a poem for my daughter? Can you write,
Hey, there's nothing wrong with taking a little pat on the back, You can pat yourself on the back. It's all good. Take some of that credit. You got to give yourself some of the credit. I salute the divinity in you. I respect the divinity in you. That just don't happen. If you sit there and do nothing, you know what you're going to get?
Nothing.
You know what I mean? So there's nothing wrong with taking some credit. You got the notebook out. You had to walk in your calling. You have to walk in your truth. That's your truth. That's yours. I can't do what you do. I'm not trying to do what you do. I salute you, though. I definitely salute you.
I appreciate it.
Facts. Take that credit. It's yours. So I want you to take me back. I want to go back a little bit, right? Take me to a younger version of Tamara Fraizer.
Okay.
Take me to maybe like 13, 14 years old. If you could give her some insight or you could give her some advice, what would be the advice that you would give a younger version of yourself? And what would you tell her?
First of all, I would tell her, you're beautiful, just like God created you. You are beautiful. I would tell her, you are worthy. So much I would tell her. Gosh. I would tell her definitely. I would, if I had the opportunity, I would go back and I would go back to high school and I would do it all over again. And because I work there, so I see the potential, I had a lot of potential. I would tell her, don't take any wooden nickels. Don't listen to them boys. Don't listen to them. I would tell her, keep running because I ran track and I was good. I was very good. But one thing that I regret is that I was scared. I was scared of everything. If my mom wasn't there, I was scared, so I wanted to be with my mom. I wanted that comfort, and she didn't make me go out there and do those things. I should have left home when I graduated. I should have explored the world, so I would tell her, it's a big world out there. Same thing I tell these kids, it's a big world out there. Go and explore it. Go and find, have fun, laugh, just have a good time.
As a writer, do you escape in your writing, or do you escape in your books? I mean, like I said, I'm glad you would share that advice. But do you kind of get lost in the craft?
Well, one thing I think that makes me good at what I do is I have the ability to slip into character very easily. I feel people. And so when I'm writing, especially when I'm writing for someone as that person, then yes, I go where they went. I go there. And um, up until I was writing a book for another domestic abuse victim.
Mm-hmm.
She had a amazing story. Her husband shot her 3 times, and she had she survived. She had gone through 34 surgeries trying to reconstruct her face because he shot her in the face. And she was the first person that I actually wrote for that I kind of got lost, and I got so deep into her character that I felt her pain, physically felt her pain. But she was the only one. I think with writing Vicky's story, there may have been a couple of small moments that, caused me to grieve, but none like that one before. And it was something so simple. I remember one of the counselors at my job, she pulled me to the side. She read some stuff that I had written. She pulled me to the side and said, when I read your stuff, I could see myself in everything that you wrote. She said, you wrote like you were that person. And she says, now the counselor in me has a question. How do you bring yourself out of that? And I said, well, it's pretty easy. I pray before I start and I pray after I'm finished. I've never had that experience before, but then it happened. And I understood what she was asking me then. I felt true grief for days. My pastor had to pray for me. She had to pray over me. I didn't, at first I didn't understand, what was going on. And then it just kept going through my mind, the particular part that I had written. And I said, it has to be, oh my goodness, this is what she was talking about when she asked me, how do I separate myself? So that was the only, time. Do I go good places when I read good things? Yes. Yes, I have a big imagination. Yes. But I also have to, had to go those other places as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are afraid to go to, those places, but it's energy, and it's spiritual energy, it's energy. Like you say, you take on those characters, you take on those characteristics, but then you talk about I don't want to call it a ritual, but it could be a ritual. You said you pray before you start writing it, and then you pray afterwards. So I would say for me, that would be a ritual. You know what I mean? There's certain things that I do before I start my day. I'm grateful. I wake up with a heart of expectancy and gratefulness. So yeah, so that would be hard. I can only imagine just to take on those different characters. That's got to be taxing.
It also helps me. I think helps me to be a better person, because when you can feel, for other people and feel empathy, and a lot of people don't have empathy for other people. So it always helps me to step into someone else's shoes, to understand people, so it helps me that way as well.
That's truly a gift. That's truly a gift. I'm gonna ask you this question here. You're on a deserted island, right? I'm gonna ask you. You could only bring 3 things with you, not 3 people. Just 3 things. Yeah, you're gonna be there for a little while now. You get to bring 3 things. What would Tamara Fraizer bring with her to this deserted island?
Well,
and why? Yeah, just 3 things. Not people, things.
Things. Well, for one, I'm gonna take at least one journal. I don't travel without at least 2 or 3 in my bag, but I have to have a journal. Absolutely. Okay. And I guess in order, oh my goodness, in order to write him a journal, I have to have, I might have to write, oh gosh, ink pen? I better take a pencil. That won't run out of ink. What else would I take on a desert? I'm trying to think what would give me the most sustenance. Food.
Yeah.
Food source. What would be my one food source that I could, make a lot out of? Make a lot.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that third one, but it would definitely be a food source.
Okay, I got you. So you talked about your journal right there, and just take us there because for me, I think it's important to keep a journal for my thoughts and for ideas. I don't ever know when something spontaneous is gonna hit me, so I like to try to keep it down. So for you, maybe you could tell us why you've decided. When did you start to keep a journal? Why did you start to keep a journal? And maybe you could give us some insight on your journaling.
I've been keeping journals since I was a little girl. Diary when I was little. And I've always written stories in my journals, mostly. And I've always had journals. I don't know how many people know that if you want to gift me in any way, a $2 journal,
There you
Dollar
go.
Tree,
There you go.
doesn't matter. That's going to give me the most joy.
Awesome.
And I have lots of inspirational stories in them, poems. If a particular line just pops up, I want to save it for a poem later down the line. These journals have everything in them, everything. Notes. It's freeing, to get it out. I would always write letters to people if I was upset. Whatever I was feeling, I would write a letter. And it may not be mailed, but I would get it out. It was my way of getting out, things that bothered me, because I've always been the type of person who didn't like to say things that hurt people's feelings. Yeah. And so I would just write it,
Awesome.
because I knew that, when things stay inside, they fester and then they come up the wrong way. So I would always, write it down to get it out.
Okay. So we already took you in the past. All right. Take us in the future. 5 years from now, what do you see Tamara Fraizer doing 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I would definitely be self-employed only. I will be retired. I will have probably, let's say 5 years from now, I would say I'm gonna 7 more titles, at least 7. I will be offering consultation services. I will be mentoring other writers. Yeah, that's what I'll be doing.
Just keep speaking the word. Just keep it. I hear you speaking the word. I hear you.
Get those 7 titles.
So tell the beautiful infinite creators, how can they find you on social media? How can they find your books? Where can they find you and things like that?
Okay. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram at The Right One, TPF The Right One. Excuse me, TPF The Right One. On Facebook at the author Tamara Fraizer. My website, tamaratheauthor.com. Find me there. And I think that's all. I think that's all my social media handles.
All right. So I usually ask all our guests before they leave, before we sign off, I usually ask all the beautiful infinite creators, leave us some parting words. What would Tamara Fraizer leave as parting words to all the beautiful infinite creators out there, what can she leave for us?
Well, infinite creators, let's see. Well, I tell people all the time, know your worth. Know your worth and don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. You can do all things. Every last thing that's in there, that's in here, just, go for it. Learn your craft. Like I said, make sure that you learn it and you're so good at it that people will pay you to do it. That's the best kind of work. The kind that does not feel like work, So if there's something that's in your heart, I say just let go. I tell people all the time, I have more years behind me than I do in front of me.
There you go.
So there is nothing that is in my heart to do that I'm not going to go out there and at least try to do. At least try to do it.
Thank you. There you have it, beautiful infinite creators. There you have it. Tamara Fraizer, the author, the writer, the publisher. We have her. We want to humbly bow before you. We salute the divinity in you. Thank you for sharing your time and your energy. Definitely got to do this again. Thank you, Tamara. Make sure you enjoy your day. All right?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.